Two cool bros tooting each other's horns.
We the best!
Today, we are talking about what legacies are on the line in the 2022 NBA playoffs.
Yes. We all know that players get judged for how they perform in the playoffs, so it's a lot of good ones going on this season.
A lot of very interesting storylines, and we wanted to give our takes on some of those storylines today. Today, we're going to go over just a few of the playoff teams, ones that we were most interested in. So we're going to go over 4 teams today. We're going to talk about Phoenix, Minnesota, Boston, and Philly. And so we're going to start out with Phoenix. Scott, what are your thoughts about what legacies are on the line with the Phoenix Suns this postseason?
Yes, well, this is obviously a team very close to my heart, so we had to talk about this one. My main thought is that although there's a lot of expectations for the Suns, I really feel like there's not much downside for them legacy-wise, in that they've already had the best season in franchise history. They're coming right off the title run. You know, I think that there's the upside for them to be the best Suns team of all time, and they're pretty close to that. But I don't really see much downside. It would be bad if they lost to Dallas, yes. But this is a team that's in a great state. I don't think people are going to really judge any of the young guys' legacy if they lose this time. And Chris Paul's the one who could be criticized for his legacy, but he also just had the most efficient shooting game in playoff history. 14 for 14 in a closeout game on the road. So that makes it pretty hard to criticize him. And, I think it's all upside. So obviously the 2 previous Suns finals teams, they didn't get back for 20 years, 20 plus in the case of after the Barkley team. So if they could make another finals run, then they're clearly the best Suns team of all time. I think you can already say they're better than the 7 seconds or less Suns, who were great for a long time but could never get over that hump to even make the finals. So I really see this as like a great opportunity for the Suns to establish themselves both as the best Suns team ever, but also as the hot young team. You look at a guy like Bridges going crazy. I think that just shows how good this team can be for a long time.
I completely agree with you at that point. I think the biggest thing for a lot of NBA fans is, can Chris Paul actually do it? Because this is by far his best chance to win a ring in his career. He was on the best team in the entire league by more than 8 games, or by 8 games or whatever.
Yeah, by 8
he's
games,
still the alpha of that team. He's not on the downslope where he is, riding some other guy's coattails. He is still the alpha on this team. So this is kind of, I'm looking at this like this might be Chris Paul's last chance to really establish himself as like the GOAT of point guards if he can really take that championship with this squad. Because I think for a lot of NBA fans too, it's like if he doesn't do it this year, he ain't shit. When is he gonna do it? Because he had the best team, he had the most balanced team. He's still the alpha. Like, I think this might solidify his legacy in terms of positive or negative. This might be Chris Paul's last chance because this is his age 37 year. He doesn't have a lot of these chances yet left, especially to be the alpha. And then the other question I had was just as a team, kind of like you were talking about. I thought that maybe something on the line for this team was last year a fluke, because that is something on the mind of a lot of NBA fans. Was last year a fluke? Did they just benefit from all the injuries?
Yeah.
Did they benefit from all the injuries and have a fluke year? Kind of like did they have some sort of, not a perfect analogy here, but like, were they like the 2011 Dallas Mavericks who kind of got there and then disappeared completely, right?
Right.
Or, are they, or the, anyways, there are a bunch of examples of that, right? So are they a fluke team that got there this year, or are they going to continue building off that? So I think if the Suns don't make the finals this year, it will be a huge disappointment for the Suns franchise. And like you said, it kind of leaves up in the air. Well, okay, what iteration or what era of the Suns was the best, right? Still, if they can get back there maybe next season, if they don't get there this year, I think the door is still wide open. The other one I had one more, if you wanted to talk about one more, was Ayton. I think this, and not necessarily his, overall legacy, but like he can solidify this postseason whether or not he is truly a max player. And I would say through the first round with the Pelicans, he looks like he absolutely is. But now we're also getting to the point where they're going to play the Mavs here in the second round, and he is expected to eat. So he better eat, kind of one of those where, and he's done this throughout his young career and throughout last season's postseason. He's stepped up to the plate. So I think if he continues to do that and show, because I think, dude, his mid-range this year has gotten insane. And
it's a whole new element to his game.
Yeah, I know we are biased Suns fans, but I think he can solidify for a lot of NBA fans overall whether or not he truly is worth a max in this postseason.
Yeah, I think for him it's a huge one, of course, because I think he's getting a max already this offseason. I think if the Suns don't offer it, someone will, just because of his age and his versatility. But you're right in the sense that he can really make it a no-brainer if he keeps up his play. And I want to circle back to the Chris Paul thing. I think you had a good point where this can solidify his legacy either positive or negatively. I was kind of saying there's no real downside risk for him, just because there's two camps on Chris Paul already, right? There's those who still think he's one of, if not the best point guards of all time, despite his playoff struggles. And then there are those that will hold it against him and say that he couldn't win on all these teams, that, he always blew it in the playoffs. Probably the same people who hold it against Barkley, right? Mm-hmm. Those people who kind of view, if you can't win a championship, it's this major knock on you. I'm not in that camp personally because so many things can happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a team sport.
It's a team sport. Crazy things happen. He's had a lot of injuries, so I don't think there'd be many people who, if the Suns lose this year, would suddenly turn on Chris Paul. I think people are pretty firmly in their camps. So I don't think more people would turn on him, but he could get that boost of, okay, if he does win this, then everyone who's in that camp hating on him for not winning, they can't say anything.
Yeah.
That's the only knock in his entire resume, is that he doesn't have a title.
Pretty much.
He's done everything else. So
pretty much.
Yeah.
And he's been an alpha his entire career.
Yeah, he just takes out. I mean, you watch him play; it's just beautiful. It's insane. All right, we're gonna get a good shot, and then that last game was just amazing. It's just
amazing.
It's not like this isn't a center who's making 14 layups and dunks.
He's making tough fadeaway
shots.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I couldn't believe that there's no big man who's ever done something like that, and it's pretty crazy for a point guard to have the best perfect game.
Yeah, I agree. That's just nuts, dude. Impressive. Just nuts. You would think some guy who benefited, like Shaq, might have had a game like that or something.
Right.
But yeah, anyways.
Super efficient big. Yeah.
So I think that's where we're standing with the Suns. I do think that there is, a lot on the line with them this year. They still have a lot to prove. The second team that we want to talk about is a team that has a lot to prove, but not nearly as much on the line, in my opinion, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have been going through a rebuilding process, I would say, in the last decade or so. And I think the big question for them as a team is, have they finally gotten a core together that is worth keeping, right? They went through the Kevin Love years where they had one guy who was a beast and they could never figure out what to put around him. They went through the whole Andrew Wiggins era, and they tried to put Jimmy Butler around him, and then they got Cat, and that didn't work out, right? Yeah. So they blew that up, and they kept Cat, but now they have D'Lo, and now they have Ant. So it's kind of like, have they finally found a young core worth building around? The team looks primed to make a surprising playoff run, but we found out just tonight that they lost in Game 6, which was a tough. But they played Memphis tough in the first round.
Oh, yeah.
But it is kind of weird because I feel like Minnesota is still a team that, they feel oddly off schedule, for their core's age, right? They still feel like they're a step behind where they could be or where they should be if they really wanted to contend consistently, right? And I think Ant is already making waves, and he will likely continue his ascent no matter what happened to this postseason. But what I saw too in this postseason, and I didn't know quite what to make of it, so I wanted to ask you this question: what do you make of what I deemed their undeserved swagger?
Yeah. it is interesting to see a team like that who, like you're saying, is undeserved. And is that just immaturity? Is that kind of a mental weakness? I mean, I think you can also look at them blowing all these leads, and you wonder, is that immaturity? Is that mental weakness? So I think maybe they're the kind of team that gets too full of themselves or too ahead of themselves, and they don't play under control. It's kind of like the opposite of the Suns, where the Suns are just steady. Like they run the same, they just run their offense up 20, down 20, doesn't matter. Whereas you see with Minnesota, these wild runs. I mean, they blew massive leads. I want to say, 26-point lead in Game 3.
Two of them. They were up 25 twice, and they blew it twice.
Then they even the series go 2-2, and then they blow an 11-point lead in Game 5 with 7 minutes to go. And then tonight, up 12 in the third.
They were up 10. They were up 10 going into the fourth. They were up double digits going into the fourth tonight, and they lost.
So that's, you have 3 games where they were in control. Yeah. I mean, they were, if you looked at win probability, you're probably talking 90+%. On that 26-point lead, you're definitely talking like 98%.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
So you're looking at a team that won 2 games and had 3 essentially won and lost in 6.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a huge concern. It's kind of this idea you're saying, like, do they have the core they can build around? And to me, I would say no. I mean, they have great pieces, but you can't be blowing 3 huge leads like that.
What do you think they need?
Well, one big thing would be if Cat could be more consistent. I think that was a big issue in general. Like, I think if Cat was more consistent, that doesn't necessarily stop you from blowing the lead, but he absolutely disappeared in a few games this series. I mean, he had, 15 points in Game 2, 8 points in Game 3.
Ooh,
he took 7 shots in Game 2. He took 4 shots in Game 3.
That really?
4 shots.
That's crazy. I did not realize he disappeared that much. Wow.
His Game 3 line was 8 points, 5 boards, 1 assist. He did have 5 blocks. That's great, but 4 turnovers. He just disappeared in those games. And
well, okay, can I ask you something since you're looking at it right now? I don't have it pulled up. What were his personal fouls? Because to me, again, I wasn't super in tune with those games every single night. Or all those games, but it seemed to me whenever I was watching that he was getting like silly fouls. Like he took some really silly fouls and got himself into foul trouble.
He had 5 fouls in Game 2. He was only able to play 28 minutes in Game 2, which was a blowout. He had 5 fouls in Game 3, still played 33 minutes. So to me, that's not an excuse to only take 4 shots.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Oh my gosh, no.
Well, in that Game 3, he only got to the line 2 times. I mean, it's just...
So 1 bucket. He got fouled 1 time.
That's just brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. So, the fouls were an issue, though. And then he had 5 fouls in Game 5 also. So he did keep getting himself into foul trouble. Committing the kind of fouls that you would not see Ayton commit.
No, and like silly offensive fouls. That's what I saw. Yeah. Silly offensive fouls where it's like he's obviously hooking a guy and then complains to the ref when it's like, dude, like you're huge and that was an obvious hook.
Right. Everyone saw it. It's clearly a foul.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think for as good a season they had, I think it's got to be a real bitter taste in their mouth to end the season like they did. I think this feels worse than a normal round 1 loss. So they hadn't been there. I think they last made it 4 years ago. But to me, like, they're just going into offseason. They have to be kicking themselves to have blown those 3 leads.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, it feels like they had all the pieces and all the talent.
They matched up really well with the Grizzlies. There. Yeah.
Yeah, who have been incredibly hot. It's like Grizzlies were playing great. Minnesota looked every bit their equal. And they really, I mean, I feel like they have to blame themselves. So that's got to be a bitter feeling for what is still an exciting young team. And it was a great season. They got to be happy overall, but oof.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's a reason for optimism going into next season. Is being like, look, we had the leads. We just got to learn how to finish. So they might continue to build on that core, understanding, look, we almost upset the number 2 seed. Like, we were ahead in all those games, and we should have won those games. So it might be a reason for optimism and confidence for them moving forward as well. But they're going to be one to look out for.
I do think it kind of also feeds into this history of the Timberwolves of blowing in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Kevin Garnett didn't make it out of the first round until his 8th attempt. And then they made it again with Cat 4 years ago, lost in the first round. So we're talking, 9 first-round exits out of 10 playoff trips.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
just brutal.
I know most of these guys were like kids during the KG era. Like some of them were like Ant was probably like 8 years old. So that probably doesn't really mess with him. But
no,
that fan base, you got to be feeling.
The Minnesota fan base for all sports is pretty tortured. Tortured. Yeah. Or at least for football and basketball.
Well, Minnesota, the college has a good hockey team, right? I'm sure. So you got that going.
They have a bunch of good hockey, yeah. And the Wild is... Again, all right, I'll say this. My dad grew up in Minnesota, so I've heard stories about this. I did not personally experience this, but even the Minnesota Wild, there was like a lot of, I don't know if angst is the right word, but maybe animosity, because they kind of had, at least from what my dad's told me and their feeling about it, it was kind of like a Sonics to Thunder situation where they felt like Dallas stole their stars from them. And they hate, especially because the Vikings and Cowboys have never liked each other, really. So I was like, really? You're going to fucking take it to Dallas? Like, fuck you guys. Like, that's what my dad has explained to me. He's like, no, I fucking hate the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, it's like your girlfriend leaves you for that one guy you just hate. You're like, really?
Yeah.
That D-bag? Like, come on.
Or the guy she told you not to worry about.
They're not good for you, Stars?
Yeah. Let's move on to the Eastern Conference. So in the Eastern Conference, we wanted to talk about Boston, the number 2 seed. Go ahead. You start this one.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. Well, Boston, I love this team in general. I mean, great team in a great spot. I think they're in an interesting spot, right? So they have their new coach, Ime Udoka, I think is how you say his name. First-year coach. Brad Stevens moved up into the, front office type role. So it's kind of an interesting thing where you have a team with a new coach, but it's not really under new management, right? It's a new head coach, but it's still the same regime. Still a lot of the same guys. And I think with a team like this, I looked at it, they have everyone returning next season. So they can run this squad back. On the surface, it might not feel like huge pressure, but I feel like they're at a spot where even making the conference finals doesn't really feel like anything's moving forward. I think they're kind of the opposite of Minnesota, where just winning round 1 for Minnesota would have been this great success and would have been one of the best seasons in Minnesota history. Whereas in Boston, obviously, anything short of a title isn't even close to the best season in history. And, their team, they made 3 conference finals in the past 5 seasons. So anything short of getting past that mark is at best treading water. But I think they're in this tricky spot where their core is pretty young. Tatum's like 23, Brown's 25. They're still going to be good for a while, but it feels like not getting to the finals is a failure this season. So that'd be my thought on them. They got to make some progress.
It's all good. Completely agree with your points and my notes. I said for this core, because I totally agree. They've made conference finals with this squad. They've gone deep in the playoffs with this squad. My big question for them is, can this core get over the hump? And if they don't, do they trade somebody? Do they move somebody? Because one of their great things, you could either view it as a positive or negative, just like you were talking about. I looked at their contracts too. They have everybody locked in till like 2025, 2026. It's crazy. They're like super locked in. So if they get over the core, or if they get over the hump this year, like this core is looking outstanding for multiple years after this. The only big free agent they have this summer is Al Horford, and he's not as big of a piece as he used to be, or not as important as he used to be. So I think the biggest question, player-wise, for the Celtics this season is Jaylen Brown. If he, fails to live up to the hype, which he has so far in round 1. But it's pretty, I feel like Jason Tatum has solidified himself. He has shown himself. He's had 50 burgers in the playoffs. Jaylen Brown's still a little bit of a question mark. So I think this is a big playoff run for him in particular. And I think, depending on how he plays, he could get himself onto the trade block so they can get over the hump, right? If they don't play well and it's Jaylen's kind of fault or he disappears like we talked about Cat doing, then he might be the piece that they try and move, that they might try and flip because he does have a ton of value. And then the other thing is, if he does perform well, do they max him on his next contract? Like, does he become their next max player? And they kind of have like two very similar max players in Tatum and Brown, which would just be like super badass for them. Like, I would, as much as I don't like the Celtics being good again, just because the Suns haven't won one yet, but it's like, dude, for them, from their perspective, that's amazing. And then the other thing too is, I think Channing Tatum in my notes. Will Magic Mike? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know what you were watching last night.
Will Jason Tatum?
There's a great plot in that movie too. That's what people don't realize.
Yeah, I watched it for the plot, dude.
And the choreography. Got to learn some new moves for using the bedroom.
Will Jason Tatum take his game from, like, he's a very solid all-star right now, and like I would say he's arguably a superstar, but I think depending on how his play goes this offseason, or not this postseason, he could become like the next face of the league. Like, I think he could be in that echelon of players, like top 2-3 players in the league. So that's another thing that I would look out for if I'm a Celtics fan or on the Celtics, front office or whatever. Is like, does I said it again, dude. Does Tatum have another step to take? Does he have another level?
Yeah, and to kind of circle back with what you're saying with it earlier about how do they blow it up if this doesn't work? I think it's interesting. A couple teams that kind of strike me, obviously not in terms of like their actual build, but in terms of this thing, like you look at Utah. You know, Utah has had this sustained run of success where they've had extremely good regular season records, right? They've been number one seeds. You know, they've done everything you can do in the regular season, but they've failed in the playoffs again and again. And now I think they have reached that explosion point, right? Something's got to go. You know, is it Donovan Mitchell? Is it Gobert?
Who do you think, dude? Bonus content right here. We weren't going to talk about him, but I want to know, who do you think they should build around? Who should they get rid of?
If I was going to build, I would probably trade Gobert if I could and build around Donovan Mitchell.
That is my thinking too, but I was seeing some arguments the other day saying that Gobert is the guy they should build around. I was like, oh, no, I think Mitchell's much more valuable.
I agree. I think Gobert has his limitations. I don't see him developing much further. And he can struggle in the playoffs when teams can scheme and match up different ways against him. I think a guy like Mitchell, he has that upside. He can just go take over games in the playoffs. And, I mean, overall, they just didn't build their team very well. The team kind of passed its window. But, so there's Utah. What was the other one I was about to say? Total brain fart on that. Anyways.
Well, the last team that we wanted to talk about today was Philly. So
yes, Philly.
I'll start with my thoughts on Philly. And we did just find out today that Embiid has an orbital bone fracture and possible concussion, and he's out indefinitely. So he might be missing the entire second round, which is going to definitely transform this playoff run.
Just a note on that. I was reading on Twitter, and this just came out, so this will obviously change. But it sounds like he might avoid surgery, which could speed up the recovery some, but it's still going to take rest. And there's something, on average, players have missed something like 22 days off this type of injury. But again, there's a wide range based on, it's basically, are any of the bones displaced or anything like that? You know, the varying degrees of it. So maybe he could be back in a week or so. Maybe it'll be 3 weeks plus. I mean,
is this that injury where the guys can wear the masks to help?
He's going to have to wear a mask when he comes back, yeah.
Yeah.
But he still will have to rest on before, and there's going to be a risk of re-injuring it too.
Yeah.
He actually got this exact same injury a few years back on his other eye. Same type of fracture and a concussion. And I think he missed 22 days that time.
Interesting.
Most of that was regular season, but he did miss 2 playoff games, I believe. Something along those lines. So maybe it would have come back quicker if it had been all playoff, but that's just kind of a time range. We could be looking at 3 weeks easily. Best case, maybe a week.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really another blow. But go ahead and keep going into your notes.
So I mean that's definitely something that changes the landscape a little bit here. But my big question, and I think this is most NBA fans' biggest question with this team, is can James Harden actually win in the playoffs? And he's definitely going to have to prove it. Now that Embiid is out, he is going to have to shoulder the load. Or, is he just the quintessential stat-stuffing regular season player? He hasn't made the finals as an alpha, right? He made it with the Thunder as the third wheel, but he hasn't done it by himself. So I think that was the biggest question for me going into this playoffs, because I think Embiid is still at a point where I don't think anything is really on the line for his legacy. Like he's done enough at this point in his career to he has more chances, and he's definitely shouldered the load on the team and gotten them to he's played at an MVP level this year.
Right.
So I don't have any questions about him.
Even the injury, you can't really say this is a case of him being injury prone.
Right.
The guy took an elbow to the face. I mean,
yeah.
That's not injury prone or not. You can blame the coach. You can blame Doc Rivers for having him in up 30 with 4 minutes to go. That's why you don't risk your guys in a situation like that.
Maybe that's another question for this team. Is Doc Rivers the guy? Do they need to move on from him?
Right. And I think, but yeah, I'm with you on Embiid. It's hard to say that his legacy is going to take a hit either way. He's had a great season. Really unlucky injury here. So I don't think you can knock him for that. But with Harden, like you're saying, can he step up? Does he have it left? His numbers have been terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, not terrible. No, it's a little harsh, but
terrible
compared to where he was, where he's maybe the best offensive player in the league, certainly the best scorer. But he's at a point where so he averages 21 points a game with Philly, 48.3 effective field goal percentage in over 21 games. That's a small sample, but that's the lowest in his career, including his rookie season. Even if you include Brooklyn, it goes up to 48.5 and 22 points per game. So his scoring has just fallen off a cliff. Now, I will give him credit that his playmaking and his work as actual point guard might be some of the best of his career. He's not turning the ball over. Turnovers per 100 possessions are lowest since he became a starter. His assists are good. He is getting people looks, but that's not going to be enough on this team without Embiid.
Yeah.
They're going to need him to be the Harden that gets you 35 and 12 assists. He can't be scoring 20 with 12 assists without Embiid. So it'll be this thing where, does he have that extra notch? I don't think he does, based on everything we've seen so far. But this is also for him, this is his chance. All right. If he can beast and carry them until Embiid gets back and they go on a run, it changes everything, all the dialogue around him. But if he can't do it, it plays right into the hand of, this is a guy who's had superstar teammates everywhere he goes. Chris Paul, KD, Westbrook, Embiid, all these guys. Like, he's had a lot of great teams and great chances. So if he loses here again, it's going to be another case of, all right, Harden will get you a lot of points and it'll look great on the stat sheet, and then you'll lose in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's it. Those are our questions and what we're looking for in the next month. Our second part of the episode today, we are going to do a Toot, Marry, Kill. And we are looking at springtime holidays. So we're going to choose Toot, Marry, Kill. Toot being fuck.
Right.
Between St. Patrick's Day, Cinco de Mayo, and Easter. So
naturally,
I will defer to you.
And I'm going to start out with a kill. Let's just get that out of the way. Okay? Or murder. What do you call it? Murder, kill, same thing. So I'm going to murder Easter, which feels a little blasphemous to say, but it's happening. So I feel like Easter, you have the egg hunts, Easter egg hunts, that's great, but Honestly, I'm getting too old for those. I feel out of place, you know? And then you look at, okay, so the egg hunt's not that great. So you look at it from a candy perspective, not even one of the best candy holidays out there. Obviously, Halloween's better. But I'd also say Valentine's, to me, brings in better candy. So you're looking at best the third best candy holiday, at best. And then the main thing here is that it's also not really a drinking holiday. So it's kind of like, the other two are like prime drinking holidays to me. So that's just going to make them better value in general. So I'm killing Easter. And who am I going to toot? I'm going to toot St. Patty's Day. Okay? And my thought is that basically my tooting's a little less than the one I like as much as the Mary. So I'm tooting St. Patty's Day. For me, it lands a lot on the first day of March Madness. And that's already a holiday to me.
Mm-hmm.
I already celebrate the first day of March Madness. So it's a little redundant to me. I don't need a holiday on that day. In fact, it's inconvenient. I'm not going to go out and drink at a bar when there's 16 games on TV.
It's a good point.
I want to be at home watching all the games. So it's like, I'll occasionally indulge in St. Patty's Day. I'll toot it a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't want to go too hard on that because I already have March Madness. I don't need it. And it's not that far away from the holiday season either. I don't really know if I need another holiday that early. So so that brings me to my bride, Cinco de Mayo. And really, I like this one mainly. It falls in that sweet spot before 4th of July, a couple months before 4th of July. It's past. I feel like we need a holiday at that point. So it's just perfect. And it doesn't fall on anything other major. And I just love it in general. So I'm marrying Cinco de Mayo.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're going to be happy together.
I love your reasoning, and your March Madness thing is, dude, that's such a good point. I didn't think about that. And you know what? That only adds to my reasoning for mine. Because I am going to kill St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
I said green beer is funny, but ultimately fulfilling. Like, it doesn't, change anything about the beer. And pub crawls...
Makes it a little bit grosser.
Pub crawls are, brutal. Dude, they're, fun. They're, exciting and then fun. But then, halfway through, I'm just okay, I'm kind of done with this. We have 5 more bars to go to? Oh, my God. I don't want to... I don't want to do this. Right. And Irish music...
Go home and eat.
Funny enough, yeah, exactly, right? Funny enough, Irish music tends to make me, one, feel excluded because I don't know the words to all the, Irish pub songs, right? So I'm just I don't know the words, right? And 2, they, for whatever reason, a lot of times they make me think about, serious shit, and, I get kind of, depressed, and it's a downer, kind of. Some of those Irish
you're at the bar just all sad, not singing along and thinking about war.
yeah, dude. Potato famines.
I can see why you would kill that holiday.
Yeah, so I'm killing that one. That's definitely not my favorite. I am going to toot Cinco de Mayo.
Okay.
And I think I love Mexican food and kind of the mood, right? The Mexican music definitely gets me going, dude. I love mariachi music. Yeah. That just I feel like it's impossible not to just have a smile on your face when you're listening to Mexican music. And it's also one where I agree with you about the drinking. I definitely don't drink as much as I used to, right? But Cinco de Mayo is I will enjoy a margarita and a nice Mexican lager on that day. And I will enjoy it. But it's not I want to have a margarita every day, So that's why I kind of said toot, right? Now, Easter, this is hilarious. Because we had very opposite thoughts about this. It's the most significant. I'm a man of faith, and it's the most significant in terms of that. And as a family man, it just in the past few years, Easter has gotten a million times better. It's gotten a lot more fun. And it's become, now that I'm a family man and a dad, it's much more my speed than the other 2 holidays tend to be. And
right, I can see that.
I really like the family events now that I have a young son. And like this Easter, just a few weeks ago, I did a neighborhood egg hiding. Wow, Easter egg hunt. Oh my God, I couldn't think of the thing.
Wow,
And
you call yourself the Easter man.
I know, right? Yeah, I'm the Easter man.
Yeah.
I hosted an Easter egg hunt for a bunch of kids, and like my wife and I got so into it that we were like hiding these golden eggs. So there was one golden egg for each kid, and they were like especially difficult spots. And I just got so much joy just seeing these little kids struggling to find these golden eggs. And but it was super fun when they actually found them, when they got super pumped. And the coloring eggs is always fun. Just doing
that is
stuff.
an underrated one.
It's always fun.
I haven't colored eggs in a while, so
yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, that's always fun. And then here's another thing that again I know is personal to me, but it's become a tradition with my in-laws that we go over to my in-laws and my father-in-law deep fries Monte Cristos, which if you don't know, it's like ham, turkey, Swiss cheese, and cheddar cheese on like white bread, or what he did this year, which was special, on French toast. And then you take all of that and you deep fry it. And then all of that that sandwich deep fried, and then you like dip that in jam, and it is delicious, right? So he makes these homemade deep fried Monte Cristos, and it's like second Thanksgiving to me. It's like one of the meals I look forward to every year now.
So is that an actual Easter tradition or just his own tradition?
That's like kind of our family tradition.
Yeah.
And he started doing that he wanted to start making them on an Easter brunch, like when I was already part of the family. So it's kind of been something that we started together. So that's why, because then we have Monte Cristos, and then he always makes a ton of extra. So then I'm eating Monte Cristos for like 2 or 3 days after that. It's awesome.
Okay, well that would be enough for me to save Easter. I would have sacrificed St. Patty's Day for that. I mean, come on.
Exactly, right?
You sold me on Easter. You just saved Easter's life, maybe.
He has risen.
Easter has risen.
So, I want to know from everyone, from all of our listeners too, what holidays are you tooting? What holidays are you killing? And what holidays are you marrying of these 3 springtime holidays? I don't like to toot my own horn, but